Welcome to the Calm Analysts channel. This is Boris Tizengauzen with you. Today is August 29th and there are a lot of important news stories. The Ukrainian Foreign Ministry has delivered a note to Hungary. Orban remains silent about the deaths of children but is ready to break down in tears over the lack of Russian oil. In Kyiv, a Russian missile and drone strike damaged the Azerbaijani embassy. Was this a random strike or Putin's revenge against Aliyev? Or maybe it's a way to get on Erdogan's nerves? And after the summit in Anchorage, Putin decided to show Trump who's boss. Now, Russian reconnaissance planes are flying near Alaska every day. Are they testing Trump's resolve or just openly flaunting the Kremlin's audacity? In Russian schools, students are now studying songs by Shaman and Gazmanov. Meanwhile, Russia is striding toward North Korea by leaps and bounds. And while no one is complaining yet, what new changes await Russians in the near future? We'll talk about this and more in today's episode. If this is your first time on this channel, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss future episodes. So, the Ukrainian Foreign Ministry summoned the Hungarian ambassador and handed him a note of protest. This is trolling of the highest order. The ambassador was handed a note of protest in response to, "Attention please, discrimination against Hungary and the Hungarian minority in Ukraine." So, this is how our foreign ministry creatively responded to the fact that Robert Brovdi, call sign Madyar, was banned from entering Hungary. Let me remind you, he heads the drone systems forces in Ukraine, and not long ago reported that the Druzhba oil pipeline had been severely damaged. Basically, that's what all the fuss is about. Orban is furious over there. How could this happen? Deprived of Russian oil? That's it. Ban Madyar from entering Hungary and the European Union. Well, basically, yes. After the Druzhba pipeline hub was bombed, Orban really lost his cool. Well, what can you do? What can you do? And as for... By the way, of course, Hungary is the first to protest here. Both Szijjártó and Orban, they all spoke out. Oh dear, you can't deprive them of Russian oil. But when it comes to the attack on the European Union office in Kyiv, the killing of children in Kyiv, an entire residential building destroyed by the Russians, again, there was no outrage. Not a single word. There was no outrage about the attack on Zakarpattia either. What if, at the Flex factory, the American factory that was attacked by the Russians, what if there were Hungarians working there? Can you imagine? No one cares. That's how it is. So, what do you think? Lately, Azerbaijan has been standing up to Putin so firmly, Aliyev, I would even say very firmly, they couldn't have allowed themselves to do that before. Well, I honestly don't remember anything like that before, although, well, it's pretty clear what started it all. That is, let me remind you, Russia shot down an Azerbaijan Airlines plane with its own air defense systems. They lie, twist the facts, make up all sorts of stories, inventing things about a gas cylinder, about birds supposedly getting into the engines, but they understood perfectly well that it was their own air defense systems that shot it down. The main thing is, when everything came to light, no one admitted guilt, and Azerbaijan demanded that those responsible be punished. Of course, no one was punished. Putin, in his usual manner, started, well, let's put it simply, acting tough. Putin doesn't apologize, not a chance. It's nothing serious. You'll get over the loss of your citizens. And then things just kept escalating and escalating. We all remember how it went. Representatives of the Azerbaijani diaspora were beaten to death by Russians, and Azerbaijan started to respond. They began to respond by shutting down the Russian house, expelling, well, I was going to say the devil, but really it's the same thing, Russian propagandists from Azerbaijan. So they started tightening the screws. After that, Putin, in his typical sneaky, cunning KGB-style manner, strikes at the property of the Azerbaijani company Sokar in Ukraine, targeting an oil depot. And in response, Aliyev says, well then, we'll just lift the embargo on supplying weapons to Ukraine altogether. And at this particular stage, after the truly massive and extensive shelling of Kyiv that occurred the night before last, it turns out that they actually struck not the embassy building itself, but rather right next to it, causing significant damage in the immediate vicinity. The windows were blown out and there were cracks running through the floors. In general, I think this was definitely done as a kind of warning, like, I can do it. So that's how it is. When one of the missiles exploded and I quote, serious damage was caused by the shockwave. Cracks appeared on the roof and on the walls as well, and so on and so forth. So I think now is the perfect time for Mr. Aliyev to talk to Mr. Erdogan about the fact that Putin, in his treacherous manner, is already crossing all boundaries. I think Azerbaijan may soon move to more decisive actions, including with the help of its allies. Well, even if Turkey, let's say, did nothing against Russia, but simply stopped helping them circumvent sanctions, that alone would be a serious blow to the 1.5-meter tall conqueror. And here is what I was talking about. Trump, in his usual manner, don't call Putin a terrorist. We need to negotiate with him, don't offend him, don't humiliate him, and so on. But Putin thinks in a completely different way. Russian reconnaissance planes have started flying to Alaska almost daily after the meeting between Putin and Trump in Anchorage. According to the U.S. Department of Defense publication Stars and Stripes, citing the Pentagon, on August 26th, American fighter jets intercepted a Russian Il-20 near Shemya Island for the 5th time in a week. This island is located 2,000 kilometers from Anchorage. The aircraft was observed within the Air Defense Identification Zone for a significant period of approximately 2 hours and 20 minutes, approaching as close as 48 kilometers north of the island, specifically in relation to the U.S. mainland. There you have it, the full details. And after that summit in Alaska, incursions into the air defense zone were recorded on August 20th, 21st, 22nd, 24th, and 26th, 5 times in 1 week. At the same time, in the first half of this year, up to July, only 5 such incidents were recorded in total. So in 1 week, they matched the number for half a year. Naturally, this is no coincidence. I don't think this is some petty revenge for the fact that a B-2 Spirit bomber unexpectedly flew over that very poor copy of Putin who arrived in Alaska, that Putin from AliExpress. This is systematic pressure and threats directed specifically at Donald Trump, a test of his limits. He calmly endured the strike on the American company Flex in Zakarpattia. Well, now it means we'll be flying near the US border. Is that what Putin thinks? Because Putin is only afraid of force in response. But Donald Trump, instead of using a stick, decided to stuff him with carrots. I don't know. He already looks like he has 2 pastries stuffed in his cheeks, like those plump apples. The fact is, a real sanctions blow would instantly cripple the Russian economy. Everyone is well aware of this. Donald Trump himself says, and keeps repeating, that the Russian economy is in very bad shape, but he continues to give Putin a week, 2, 3, as much time as he needs. Right now is the best time to strike at the Russian economy. It's interesting, will these tough sanctions against Russia ever actually be imposed when Putin is so openly mocking? I'll strike an American factory on Ukrainian territory. I'll fly near your borders every day, violate them, show that I can conduct reconnaissance not far from the US border. How much further can it go? How much more humiliation is possible? Well, by the way, friends, let me remind you, while people across the ocean are still debating whether or not to impose sanctions, it's our soldiers, our heroes on the front lines, who are holding back this entire horde of ghouls. And take note, Putin's summer offensive. Where is it? Where are these dizzying successes, these breakthroughs? The front is supposed to collapse any moment now, and so on and so forth. Our armed forces have even started to recapture settlements in the Donetsk region, and they've taken back 3 settlements. Can you imagine what a miracle they're performing right now, militarily speaking? And that's even though, well, let's just say the aid is coming in irregularly. That's why I want to remind you that we are constantly holding important fundraisers for our soldiers, for our defenders. And together we're really doing a very, very good thing. Today, we're continuing to raise funds for one of the largest brigades, the separate presidential brigade named after Bogdan Khmelnytsky. Right now, they're engaged in fierce fighting in the Pokrovsk direction. Honestly, they're real heroes. Take a look at this video. They reached out specifically to us, to our channel, to you, my dear subscribers.
The war continues to scorch our land. The separate presidential brigade is reaching out to Boris Tizengauzen and the viewers of his channel with a request to provide our battalions with ATVs to carry out mobile combat missions in the Pokrovsk direction. We are sure that you are fully aware of the hell that is happening here right now. We all need to make an effort to preserve the independence of our state.
We have already delivered ATVs to one of the brigades. You remember that video? Our soldiers were really happy. They are always so modest. In general, ATVs are exactly what they need right now. Mobility, to get where they need to go, launch what they need to launch, and quickly get out of there. So let's help our soldiers. And truly, this is our contribution to the defense of Ukraine. I always thank you so much. Sometimes I even run out of words to express how awesome you are in this regard. The link to donate is in the description of this video and also in the comments. If by chance you're watching me not on my own channel, which happens, many channels share my videos and I don't mind. It increases the reach. And right now, helping our soldiers is the top priority. So if you're not watching on my channel, here's a QR code. It takes you directly to the donation page. There you'll find Monobank, Private, and also PayPal for those who want to help from abroad. Thank you so much, as I always say. Songs by Shaman, Gazmanov, Maydanov, and Trofim have been included in the list of patriotic compositions recommended for study in schools, according to the Russian Ministry of Education. The list includes 37 songs aimed at the patriotic and spiritual moral upbringing of school children. Schools independently decide which songs to use. By the way, I've already talked about this. I came across a video. Some student is filming and is just shocked. Like, what is even going on there? They're filming a video of a lesson. I don't even know. I can't call that person a teacher. Well, a propaganda teacher, I guess that's the right way to put it, is analyzing the song I'm Russian by Shaman. You know how, back in the day, they used to analyze literary works? What did you hear? And could you play a nocturne on a flute made of drain pipes? So what did you hear in that phrase? And the kids are like, well, this and that, we understood that it was about rain or something else. So here they were specifically analyzing the song by Shaman, that show-off, sorry, I'm not ageist, well, that character in leather pants who yells that his blood is from his father, I'm Russian, and so on. In all seriousness, kids, listen to how deep the meaning of this song is. Can you imagine? So basically they're going to analyze these songs. Gazmanov with his song Officers, all about the motherland, Russia, the immortal regiment, forward Russia, this world is beautiful, and so on and so forth. It's strange that, by the way, the song I'm Russian isn't included among those 37 tracks, and neither is Sarmatushki. How come? Again, the song Sarmatushki. Who doesn't know that the Sarmatushki are watching the United States Ushki? Donald Trump, what do you think of these songs anyway? Do you like them? By the way, in that list, there's the song Do the Russians Want War? I just, well, refreshed my memory, so to speak, and looked up the lyrics. So, here are the words. Yes, we know how to fight, but we don't want soldiers to fall again in battle on their own bitter land. Seriously? You don't want that? But here, they're not even falling on their own land. They're falling on foreign soil, and in such numbers that you probably couldn't have imagined before this war. And here are 4 wonderful short lines from this song, Do the Russians Want War? Ask the mothers, ask my wife, and then you should understand whether the Russians want war. Well, actually, judging by everything, they really do want it. Or rather, no. Let's put it this way. They want money. Do Russians want money? Now that's true. Now that would be about war. But what's the meaning in the song? That they don't want to fight again? But how come you shout, we can do it again on every corner if you don't want to fight? And about ask the mothers, ask my wife? I recently showed you a video where a mother was sobbing because her son didn't want to go serve in the army. She called him a coward and said, you don't want to help us, you don't want to help me or your grandmother. You're a coward. For some reason you don't want to die and turn into a huge pile of cash. So do Russians want cash? And the day before yesterday I showed a video of a Russian guy returning from captivity. And his wife, when she heard he was coming back, was really upset. She said that they were actually planning to go to Crimea, and here you are deciding to come back from captivity for some reason. I'm completely serious when I say I believe they'll head off to Crimea and he'll show up in his prison uniform and stand by the door. Although maybe he won't make it in time because I think they'll send him straight to the assembly point. And I've repeatedly come across cases where Russian mothers don't want to talk to their sons who ended up in captivity because it's a disgrace. Because you see, on the one hand it's shameful, and on the other they've lost their money. If their son, brother, brother-in-law or husband dies over there, then they're all happy. The housing issue gets resolved. They get serious money by Russian standards, but here he ended up in captivity, no money, and he's still sitting somewhere in captivity. So regarding whether Russians want war, When they shout, "We can do it again," and mean World War II, it's interesting. What exactly would they repeat if, pardon the tautology, the situation actually repeated itself? But this time, they would be left without all the other republics, without Ukraine, which took the first and hardest blow, without Belarus, without all the other republics, and without allies and without Lend-Lease. So what exactly would they repeat then? What do you think? By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It's important. It helps the channel grow. Not just this main one, but also the English language channel. So if you're watching on the main channel or the English language one, but not on mine, usually different channels that post this video will credit my official channels in the links, in the description, or in the first comment. Subscribe to the official channel and let's stay in touch. A meeting between Putin and Zelensky will not take place, stated German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. Did anyone really doubt it? Of course, the meeting between President Zelensky and President Putin, the one President Trump and President Putin discussed last week, will not happen. Right away, the indices started to drop, including the Moscow exchange. I don't think anyone actually expected that Putin would meet with Volodymyr Zelensky. He's afraid. He's just afraid, even on a physical level. By the way, we once discussed what if Zelensky actually jumped at the Botox jellyfish and grabbed him by the throat with his hands. Of course, he'd slip away, you know. This Kremlin slug would just slip away. But still, I think he's afraid on a physical level. I thought it would go like this. In Alaska, of course, Putin's replicant will lie to Trump about a possible meeting. And Lavrov and Peskov will keep repeating the mantra. Of course, a meeting is possible, but certain conditions must be met. They keep repeating this. So first they'll lie to Trump about this meeting, and then they'll claim, "What are you talking about? You misunderstood us completely." Who? Maybe Witkoff misheard something again? If tomorrow Trump says, "That's it, in 10 days I heard from Putin he doesn't want to meet." In 10 days, I'll impose sanctions. Lavrov and Peskov will show up again and say that a meeting is possible. We're ready to meet somewhere in Turkey, we don't mind. We've never refused after all. But certain conditions need to be met beforehand. What conditions? We won't tell you because we need to keep lying about this meeting. It's just amazing. Donald Trump, who has published books on negotiations, how to conduct them properly, how to achieve results, falls for the most banal, straightforward, and unsophisticated lies from the Russians. You know, being deceived by the Russians so many times really raises some suspicion. Or maybe it's like in Pushkin. But pretend. That look can express everything so wonderfully. It's not hard to deceive me. I am glad to be deceived myself. Or maybe it's from that same story, or rather that poem. Trump believes that Russia and Ukraine are not ready to resolve the conflict, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt immediately stated. Both sides of this war are not ready to end it. The president wants it to end. The leaders of these two countries need it to end and want it to end. They must want it to end. Ha ha ha. Yeah, both sides. Look, first of all, to end this war, the one who started it has to want to end it. Well, at the very least, Putin could say, "That's it, I'm ending it. We didn't start this war. They're on our territory. They're launching missiles and drones at us. They're trying to capture something here." Well, Ukraine could also end the war. There are two options: to completely surrender, capitulate, let them take over all of Ukraine, just as Putin wanted. But in that case, it's like they're Ukraine, as they say. And there's another option, how Ukraine could win the war. An option that worked quite effectively in World War II. Drive the evil forces back to their own territory, force that bald, deranged lunatic in the bunker to shoot himself, and then Russia will spend many, many decades paying extensive reparations. That's certainly one option, but we're not actively considering it right now, because our partners are geographically situated in precisely the same locations as before. But the politicians, let me put it gently, very gently, are different politicians. So what about the sanctions after these statements that Putin won't meet with Zelensky at all? What's going on with the sanctions? Or will it be Zelensky's fault again? Or rather, it'll be both Zelensky and Putin who are to blame. Both of them, just like Caroline Leavitt says, both don't want to end the war. And just forget about the sanctions for a bit, and everything I've said. And what exactly did I say? Next question. Or maybe, once again, we need to give Putin 2 or 3 weeks so they can fight a little more. And let me remind you, according to Donald Trump, 7,000 people die every week. That means 1,000 people die every day. Those are the numbers Donald Trump mentioned. 1,000 people every day. While Donald Trump is happy to be deceived, Russia is rapidly rushing back to its happy Soviet past. Happy, of course, in quotation marks, though for some people, not so much. Now, mobile internet speeds are being throttled not just in the Vologda region, but in various other regions as well. By the way, it turns out this has become a real problem in Russia. Russians, who have gotten used to having mobile internet almost everywhere, suddenly found themselves at risk of losing it. And the government, for example, in the Vologda region, recommends downloading offline maps, installing apps that work without internet, and also having a supply of cash in case banking terminals stop working. You know who's happiest about this return to a less technological or even de-technologized way of life? It's those die-hard Soviet pensioners who are nostalgic for the USSR and praise Putin. Yesterday in the episode I showed you that one elderly lady, let's put it that way, who was saying things like, Putin is our father, Putin is our leader, our chief, and so on. So they are genuinely happy about it. Yeah, after all, they never really knew how to use these technologies anyway. And in general, all these Western technologies are, from the devil. We never lived well, so why start now? So if Putin were to bring back the death penalty, they'd be thrilled too. They're always wagging their fingers at everyone and saying, if only we had Stalin back. These Putin squads are the quintessence of Putin's electorate. Bitter, angry old folks nostalgic for the Soviet Union. Oh, how they would love to write denunciations. They're delighted. The era of informing is coming back. You can snitch again. It's just a pity Voronkov isn't around. But that's okay. Just give it a little time. The internet will disappear. We'll go back to rotary phones, to mass informing on each other. And then, those creative young people, I'll report on him and maybe even move into his apartment. Just like before, like in the good old days. If only we could bring back the NKVD troikas. That's what they dream about. Remember how there was that discussion? In Russia? Well, we're not North Korea. We have the internet, social networks, car sharing, delivery services, and so on. Well, just so you understand, Russia is actually racing pretty quickly in that direction toward North Korea. They're getting people used to the absence of these Western conveniences. If you read now about how the closed internet works in North Korea, you can actually predict what will happen in Russia in 6 months to a year. Let me read it out for you. In North Korea, the majority of the population does not have access to the full global internet. Instead, there is a closed, strictly state-controlled internal network called Kwangmyong. And access to the global network is restricted to a very narrow circle of elites, diplomats, and foreign embassies. And there you go. This Kwangmyong network, its name translates as Network of Light. It contains only resources permitted by the state. You understand? The country has its own versions of popular messengers, such as Tehwa-1, like Tehwa-1, or in the Russian version, it's Messenger Max. And yesterday I didn't see this news. I stand corrected regarding the fact that there are honest, conscientious people in Donald Trump's circle who genuinely care about Ukraine. I'm talking about General Kellogg. General Keith Kellogg has said this repeatedly, and about his daughter. So, the special representative of the US president said that Russia carried out the second largest shelling of Kyiv since the start of the full-scale invasion, using more than 600 drones. And I quote, "The targets are not soldiers and weapons, but residential areas of Kyiv, civilian apartment buildings, the buildings of the EU and UK missions, as well as innocent civilians. These outrageous attacks threaten the peace that the US president is striving for. But he very skillfully and competently led to the point that it is precisely this peace that Trump, who is doing a great job, he's just super duper there, is striving for. We'll erect a golden statue for him, that's for sure, and we'll nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize if he brings this war to a just end. No questions about it at all." Here, Kellogg hit all the right points. But just so you understand, Donald Trump doesn't just have Keith Kellogg as his special representative for Ukraine, but also Steve Witkoff, whom I mentioned at the very beginning. So, some interesting details have come to light here. Witkoff, who has no diplomatic experience, broke standard protocol by attending a meeting in Moscow without a State Department secretary, and as a result there was no record of Putin's exact proposals, Reuters reports, citing a source in the Trump administration. According to the agency's source, because of this, Witkoff's diplomatic efforts turned into chaos. Witkoff's last meeting, let me remind you, was with Putin on August 6th, and after that, Witkoff told Trump that Putin was ready to make significant territorial concessions, and the US president immediately agreed to hold that very historic summit in Anchorage. Can you even imagine the level of chaos here? Witkoff misunderstands Putin. This is the chain of events. Witkoff misunderstands Putin because he didn't bring a translator with him and didn't record everything. More precisely, he didn't bring a State Department representative or a secretary. He tells Trump that Russia agrees to withdraw from part of the territories. Trump claps his hands and says, "Awesome, everyone to Alaska, let's go. Bring my motorcade there, we'll wrap up the war with Putin real quick." A poorly made Putin replicant arrives in Alaska and says that this wasn't discussed at all. But what about all those insane expenses for the summit? The bomber flights transporting the motorcade to Alaska, and the hundreds of Secret Service agents. What is even going on? Can someone please explain this to me? Well, okay, things happen. This kind of thing happened. But after that, some personnel decisions need to be made. I mean, you can't just keep everyone on until the very end, even if these people are seriously messing up. That's what I think. Although, who am I to give advice to Donald Trump, really? And tomorrow he might misunderstand something again and just start World War III. He'll say, "So I talked to Putin and he suggested we hit China together, today at 6 p.m. I mean, what is even going on here? Alright, friends, okay, Ukraine does have those who take a pro-Ukrainian stance. Ukraine really does have many friends, and to all of them we always say thank you for their help and support of Ukraine. And you, friends, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones, subscribe to this channel, and let's support our soldiers. I'm really asking you to contribute to this fundraiser. Wishing us all a peaceful day, and of course glory to Ukraine.